Today I want to be talking a little bit more about the things to be mindful of, and especially going to focusing on the first hindrance of the 5 hindrances, the worldly desire. So Buddhist philosophy is like, it's filled with like different logs and like different numbers and like things that influence each other. So it's really hard to even start anywhere, because it just feels like you put your hand somewhere and it just like goes into a blender. It's like because like everything affects everything. So at least like starting somewhere, like I will today start with the 5 hindrances, because I haven't really talked that much about Buddhist philosophy yet. But you need to kind of like have a grasp idea of what mindfulness is, that like just being aware and understanding. I gave the car simile, like the way that like how you can be in an intersection and then you can count cars as your job and like seeing how many cars go different directions. And that's mindfulness, kind of like understanding what emotions you have and what is happening in the present moment, and like why are they happening and how they are happening. So that's like one part of mindfulness. But the other part of mindfulness is like having also like a police next to that too, who's saying that like what kind of behavior should be punished, like not punished, but like it should not be repeated, and what kind of actions should be desired, and what kind of actions should be more common. Now, when you're mindful, there in the Buddhist text, especially in the Theravada Buddhism text, what is the more older traditional side of like Buddhism. Well, don't quote me on that. But in that school, they have 4 things to be mindful of. The first is the body. So being mindful of the body. What is your body actually? Like what is happening within your body? And that's what we are doing like over here in this community when we are doing body scans and mindfulness breathing meditation, because it's a really good exercise to build mindfulness and build meditative power to be more mindful like in your everyday situations where when you're doing acts. Now, that's one thing to be mindful of, like even throughout your days too, like, you know, how does your body feel, and like do you have any pains or anything weird going on in your body. But then also being mindful of, so there's 4 things. So that's the first thing, the body. Then there's the emotional states that one has. So being mindful of what kind of different emotions are happening within your body. Are you feeling sad or happy? So that's like actually a really huge power of meditation, is that the fact that like once you meditate over here and like meditate in your own spare time too, you can transfer the meditative object from the breath to your mental state and like, you know, your feelings and your emotions, what you're having. So when one is deeply in love, they understand that they're deeply in love. And when one is deeply in hatred, they understand that they're deeply in hatred. Hello, Melon. Welcome. And hello for people who are joining in the chat too, or like in the Twitch too. So like, it's really important to be mindful of the mental, emotional states that one has. So like, for example, like you understand that when anger is rising within you, you understand like you should take a step back, because you're this close saying something wrong, and then you will regret it for the rest of your life. But being mindful of the mental state, the emotional states that one has, like feelings and emotions. On top of that, the third thing is to be mindful of mental states, like what is actually like your overall mental state. So how does it differ when you wake up compared when you're fully awake, compared when you're really sleepy or when you're drunk? Like these kind of like overall mental states, and being aware that like, hey, like actually I don't think that this drink that I took at the bar just was water. I think that there was something else in this too. But also like being aware like what kind of different mental states one has, and like it's kind of like having a HUD, Like when you have your headset on, for example, like on VR, you can have like a HUD. Like I can see myself that my mic is open at the moment. But once you have like the HUDs for your body, how your body is feeling, what kind of different emotions you're having, and what kind of mental states you're having, it's much more easier to work with life in general, because you know that like, hey, at the moment I'm quite frustrated, so I should take a step back or something like that. But the fourth category is to be mindful of different Dhamma objects. That's how it's said. And how would I translate this to English is to be aware of different teachings of the nature of reality that you have learned throughout your life. Hello. Welcome. So a lot of people like teach you really good life lessons, and you can be aware of the different life lessons that you learned throughout your life. So being aware when those things actually happen, like for example, like when you tell your friends, like, you know, like, oh, money doesn't buy happiness, like you can catch yourself when you're in that same position too, that like when you're actually trying to buy happiness with money, then you're like, oh yeah, true, I'm actually like within this teaching itself. So but there are a lot of different like the Dhamma objects are generally categorized as the different teachings in Buddhism. And I will today start, at least it's gonna take 5 weeks to me to talk about this, the 5 hindrances of classical Buddhism. So the classical 5 hindrances, and starting off with the first one. And like once a person learns the five hindrances, they can often recite them to themselves, like, am I having these 5 hindrances? And then when they have them, then they can be like, oh wow, okay, now it's nice, I have this one of these hindrances. And then they can recite like how it happens and why do humans have these hindrances, and then also like how to get over it, because I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact, like, you know, how to take care of the hindrances. The 5 hindrances are quite often categorized with or compared to the 7 deadly sins in Christianity. But in Christianity it's a little bit less, not that detailed and not that well explained, like how do they work. But in Buddhism they have the 5 hindrances. And today we will be starting talking about the worldly desire. That's the first one. I will maybe go through them all, like reciting them all at the very end, but only today is just focusing on worldly desire. So I would say that these hindrances are things that really hinder your own progress while meditating, but also like having happiness in life in general. Like when you're like living throughout your entire life, some people can be so driven completely within these hindrances that like it's just their cause of like not being happy, like in general in life. So the first thing is the feeling of want and the feeling of desire of things, and the feeling that you're lacking something and you want something right now. I think most of us have had this feeling, like, oh, like I am lacking like a really nice car or something like that. But I guess that it's no big news to you guys that it's not the first time that you might have heard that like material goods don't buy happiness. Or is this something completely new to you?
Yeah, but that would help though.
Yeah, for sure. It can help, and for sure it gives me the power to be over here on VRChat itself, like in this kind of form when I have material things. But it's more, we're talking more about, not about the materials themselves, but we're talking more about the need and the want and the desire about them. When you're really invested, like I want and I need to have, like for people over here who are on desktop, for example, you might come over here and be like, oh, I want to also be having full body VR too, like, you know, I'm really missing out.
Today, aren't you?
Yeah. But of course, like I also had the same feelings too when I also was playing VRChat with a desktop only. I didn't have VR. And I was thinking like, man, like I need to have VR because then I'm gonna be happy. And once I get VR, like, then everyone will know me. I will have more fame. People will like me more. And at that point, I will be happy. But guess what happened when I got full body VR? The emotion still was there, like, the lack of things. Because once you put yourself in a place where you believe that in certain conditions you can find happiness, and in the future especially, you are already in debt. It's the same idea, like, while having like student debt or something like that. Once you put yourself in a place where you believe that I need to have a nice car or full body VR or a girlfriend or anything really that doesn't exist in this present moment, then you're already in debt. And then this moment is going to be much more harder to be within, like in this present moment. That's why, like, in meditation, it might be much more harder to meditate, because it is the practice of being in the present moment. But it might be really hard to be in the present moment if you believe that there's something lacking in the present moment. But I had to talk about the core aspects about happiness. And the core aspects about happiness was that, like, you cannot be happy in the future or in the past, because you cannot be anywhere else than in the present moment. Or this might be something that you might have heard yourself too, throughout different things in life. But when we meditate, we practice ourselves coming back to this normal state of like the present moment. And in that moment, if you might have issues with meditation, you might notice that if you're like, I desire to be, for example, enlightened, and I wish to be more stress-free, I wish to be more anxious-free, and so on. You put yourself in a condition where you can only be happy in that one certain condition. So your happiness is unconditional. It is within conditions. But when one learns how to be loving and kind and happy and joyful without conditions, like there doesn't need to be any conditions. Like the world doesn't need to be perfect for you to be happy, because it's never gonna be perfect in the first place. But that's a really core aspect about like world desire, that the desires that humans have, that it causes a lot of like suffering and it's also like mentally really draining too, in the sense that there's a lot of things that you do throughout your day that you just do them automatically, but you don't need to have the deep desire of like crossing a room or brushing your teeth. You don't need to be like, if I brush my teeth, then I will be happy. But it's really mentally tasking when one has like these really deep mental states where they're like, I need to have full body VR to be happy. I'm gonna use this example now because it's something that we can most of us can over here relate to. I went through really good notes. I have them on the wall, but I didn't put too many. The Buddha gives a couple of similes on the nature of desire, and the one is the fact that one is in debt once they put and condition that in the future or something like that at that point I will be happy and desired and so on. But the other simile is that is kind of the same as like when you have your mind is kind of like a pool of water, and like when you put like gasoline or dyes on the pool of water, you start seeing like how like there's like different beautiful colors on top of the water, but it really distorts what is inside of the water itself. So desire is the same thing. Like when you desire something, you start having this kind of idea of it, right? So you cannot really see what it's actually the entire thing itself. For example, like having a partner, right? So if you have a really deep sense of like, I want to have this kind of certain kind of partner, then you're like, they need to have this and that and that and that and that. And you have some kind of idea of a partner. like in general, like, when I'm in a relationship, I have these kind of things within that. But when you get to a relationship, you cannot meet the person who you are in a relationship with when you have these kind of ideas, what they should be and what it should be all about. It's kind of like the same way as like a gasoline on top of a water kind of distorts the entire water itself, like what is inside of it. It gets really hard to see what is actually there. So once you, for example, have an idea of what is like full body VR and like how it should be and so on, one starts to also have issues with, like, once they get that, it's gonna be really different. It's really hard to treat it, like when they actually get first person experience what it actually is, then like the entire ideas kind of like vanish. So it is really important to see things in life just the way that they are, and being careful of what you add. The idea is not to be like a body pooper and saying like, oh, like you should never like desire anything in life. It's more about just being aware of it when one puts like desires and wants on things, and do it that carefully, because when one does that, it takes quite a lot of mental energy to have those in place. And there's really like the core aspect of like, how to actually now I remember. So now I actually wanted to talk more about like, why do we even have the worldly desires itself, like in the first place. So like we are not born with this like out of like nowhere. Like it's not like out of random that we have desires and we have wants, because it is just a deep evolutionary reason why we have desires. And it's just that the more desireful you are, like in prehistoric human life, like throughout the millions of years, or as an animal species, the more resources and the more likelihood you have to thrive, to live, and then to have offspring. In worldly desire, one has like really deep desires of wanting more material things, but also not wanting to let them go. So for example, like a relationship, like how people are so deeply in control of that, they don't want to let go of their partner no matter what. But those people are like so scared to let go of that person, and they are so deeply within the idea of like, I need to have this certain condition to be happy, that they themselves become so scary to be around that the people just want to leave them in the first place. But so it is this like gain and loss, but there's like 8, and these are the 2, so gain and loss. Then there is pleasure and pain, so trying to gain more pleasurable feelings on the 5 senses, so on taste, touch, smelling, sight and hearing. So like lust also is within this too, like that you want to be relieved within your own physical body. And then also like the opposite of that, like being within pain and trying to prevent being in physical pain. Then there is the fact of fame and obscurity, so wanting to have more fame, that people know you, and not being that obscure. And this is like quite like evolutionary, right? That like the more fame you have, the more people you know around you, like in a forest when you're trying to hunt, and then the more people can actually take care of you, and like if they see that you're struggling, then they can notice that. Then the last ones are praise and blame. So people try their absolute best to get the best praise that they ever can in their own entire lives, but they're so afraid of the blame that they can get in their lives. So these 8 are categorized within the worldly desires, but it's like I could have 8 talks about each of those. But the most common is like the one, like, talking about material gains and like wanting to have more and more. But how do you, like, when one notices that they are not satisfied within this like present moment, Like, what should they do? It's quite the same as the word holy itself. So the English word holy comes, perhaps this is what I heard, that it comes from the word of whole, like to be whole of something, like one is satisfied. So the idea of a holy person is the one who is satisfied. So there's no conditions that like they already like perfect, like in that condition. So the idea is kind of like when one has world desires, they should like understand that like in this present moment you can only have happiness in this present moment, and there is no conditions that you should meet. You can like, it's unconditional, your own happiness and your own love and joy in this life is only in the present moment. It cannot never be in any other form. I was just thinking for a minute, because I need to think like what I'm gonna say next. So when one is like whole and satisfied, they can be satisfied and whole no matter if they lose their sense of tasting. Like, I guess that like for most people, if I would ask this, like, hey, could you be happy if you lost your sense of taste? And they would say like, for sure, like, you know, I have friends and so on. But could you still be happy if you lost your sense of taste, touch, smelling, even sight and hearing? Now that's something deeper. Now that's something like, oh no. That's really hard. But that's the idea of the holy person, that even if they lose all of these things, the external senses, they can still be happy. And that's like when you're doing meditation, like when you're like just sitting and just being still and quiet. And if you can accumulate that happiness within that scenario itself, it even goes beyond the senses that you have externally from the external world. So no matter what situation you're going to find yourself in, you can always find the happiness in that too, because it is beyond the senses. So the spiritual enlightened person is the one that okay, so humans are born from the earth, they live amongst the earth, and then they die into the earth. But the people who are spiritually awakened are the people who are born from the earth, then they live amongst, like, on top of the earth, and then they are awakened beyond the earth itself. And then after they die, they are like, they're not really dead, they're kind of like beyond that all. So going beyond like what you can sense with your sense organs itself, it is something highly desired. So if your core driver in life is that, like, for example, okay, I'm will go, this is something that I came up with really greatly, like before this talk. It's like about like DJing. Like I have a friend who does DJ. Now, imagine that you were a DJ and like you were doing the kind of like music and DJing and being in clubs, just to put yourself in a better position in the club itself. Like people in the club would be like, oh, like that guy is the DJ. He's so cool. And that's what you desire. You desire to have more people, like, you know, actually notice you, and to have more fame and more power within the club that you are in. Like that's the core reason why you're doing the DJing itself. Now, that is like, you're kind of missing the point of DJing itself, because then you're not part of like creating music, because it's much more pleasurable to be a DJ with the core aspect of, I want to create music. I want to create something that is enjoyable for all people around me, right? So not having the driver like, oh, like I want more fame and I want like a certain condition. It's more like, I don't care about that. I just want to be in the present moment, and I just want to share my own happiness with all the other people around me. and just listen to these beats and listen to this music, right? Well, at the moment there's no beats, but there's like some flutes playing. But doing it from the core aspect of sharing joy, sharing love, kindness, sharing, I'm just looking at my notes, and sharing itself, like, being generous itself, that's like really deeply is a negative force compared to worldly desire. Just being generous and finding the happiness while being generous, and that's what you want to do. You want to be generous, you want to be loving, you want to be kind, and you want to share the joy that you have in your life to all the people. And not being that controlling of the external world that you have and the circumstances that you have. That you'll be happy no matter what kind of circumstances you are. But of course, that takes a lot of time, and that takes a lot of energy and a lot of like studying and a lot of meditation to be in that kind of state where you are happy no matter what. But yeah, really finding the happiness within the present moment itself. Now, I think now I get to the point where I have like kind of like talked most of the things that I want to talk about the worldly desire. I just had to kind of like put layers and layers and layers on top of that. But that's something like, when you meditate, just notice like if you're meditating and like you have ideas and like have like desires and wants, that like, hey, like it's okay, like noticing that you have this and just carefully like examining them and gently removing them and replacing them with the fact that like, you want to be in the present moment and you want to share the happiness in the present moment with other people around you. Now, is there any examples that you guys want to share of worldly desires that you guys might have? Because I can share some of my own. Well, actually I shared already. I was talking about the oh yeah, go on.
Is there I can speak? Okay, thank you. I was just wondering, I don't want to interrupt or anything, but I'll try to be respectful as I can. So I try to respect everyone's religion, but some people, they like, I don't know. Oh wait, no, I don't know if this is like, is this the right term? I don't know how to say it. So I guess like what should I put it as? It's more like I want to respect everyone's religion, but I feel like it's too hard to do that because like I thought it'd be easy, and I'm like, I was thinking, oh, this would be cool to do this and all that stuff, but like it's not. And because people live in their own world shaped by their beliefs and stuff, and it's very like hard because like because like some people, they see them as outcasts and some people that they don't, and then like I just feel like if you have it's a very complicated subject kind of because like
Yeah,
it really is, but I
it
just
is.
feel like it is because like I try to do that now, and I feel like I just put like I feel like I'm putting too much weight of the world on my shoulder, like on my back on that, which I just need to digress and take baby steps and all that stuff. Because like, it's like, yeah.
That is a really like hard position to be at, where you try to be as kind of respectful as you can, but like then you also kind of can't feel like that you can always be like that, especially if you get treated like differently by different people from different faiths and so on. But no matter how people are gonna treat you, you're gonna be completely fine at the end of the day. And taking equanimity and taking security in that fact, that that your own happiness is beyond this material life that you already have beyond the senses that you have. And like no matter if people treat you harshly and so on, and like if you try to respect that, like just doing it out of respect, and no matter how other people treat you, just like still having the respect and sharing your own joy and wanting other people to share theirs and being generous in self. Like when you do it from that point of view, it is much more healthier. But I don't know if that answered your situation at all.
Yeah, it answers it. Yeah. It's just I've probably been putting too much stress on myself of like thinking like this next. I've been talking to other people and stuff about like what they think, and try to get conclusion, because some religions can be like very similar and stuff like that, but they just see things differently, at different perspectives. You know what I mean? Like as like let's say people see that God is good and that the devil is bad for like Christian or Catholics and all stuff. But like for Buddhism, it's like the ego. You have bad ego, you have good ego, or something like that. It just depends on how you represent yourself. And some people say like, oh, he's that. It's like that type of aura or like that type of feeling you tell, kind of. And it's not like I heard it from this guy named Messiah. He was pretty like he talks about some stuff. I don't know if you ever heard of him. I don't know if he's in the group or not, but he talked about like egos. Like, so let's say I don't want to say the guy's name because some people might hate it. I mean, it's like the guy in like World War II is to say the dictators and stuff like that, or we say like Putin. Yeah, I guess we could say Putin. Like some people think that he's evil, he's like the devil or something like that. That's more like symbolic or more like a metaphor as like that. So like like all that stuff. So like spiritual, you can say that way too. Could be. I don't know if I'm correct, but it's just like that. But like if you have good ego, people can see how he is, and then people will follow you. Or if people see you the bad in you, they give you bad intentions, but still people. So I don't know how he put it as, but he put it as like people. It's more. How should I put it as? It's more like symbolic. I guess it's more like it's symbolic, like because because the bad ego is basically like the devil. I know I already said this, so I might be repeating myself again. But and then the good is the God. So that's what he was trying to talk about. So like if you do good stuff, get like good stuff, like I mean you like you feel good, like you feel like something like that. But if you're caught in this loop where you're doing bad, it's just not gonna be good. Because basically what I'm saying is like some people say that so what's your difference, like, so he said like what's your definition, like what do you think if like what hell is like? Some people say that if you lose faith, that's basically hell, because or something like I think I don't know like how to put it as. Some people think like it's more.
Yeah, Catholics say hell is separation from God.
Yeah, it's some people say like, oh, it's hell on earth, like people like living here, and then people say when you pass away you're in heaven and all that stuff. But like some people say, but like what truly is heaven? Because I'm not saying like I'm not like very religious. Yes, I was born and raised Catholic, but I'm not like into Catholic as much. But it's just like I'm trying to connect the dots a little bit about it. Is that but like so they I'm trying to think how did he put I wish he was online so I can send him an invite, but he was really good at what he says, and
I bet so.
He had some really good questions about it, because like he talked about like some really good stuff, and it made me like start thinking really good, and I'm like and made me like all that stuff, because basically he says like, so what's your think about heaven? And I just think about like I'm thinking about like stuff like that I accomplished my goals, try to better myself, this and that. And and he's like, oh, what do you think about hell? And some people say like, hell is like a place where it's like basically fire and stuff, but it's like it's like symbolic, because if you don't know yourself, you're not gonna succumb like over the stuff. So like succumb over like a battlefield. Like I don't know how.
For sure,
not
for
like a
sure.
battlefield, but like
Yeah.
succumb. So yeah.
Mm.
I don't know. I'm speaking gibberish. I don't know where it's going. But
Yeah. No worries, no worries. No,
sorry.
that's wonderful
Yeah, my
to hear. No, that's wonderful to hear that you're also doing your own studying too, and that makes me really think that like talking about the bad and the good ego. Now we were talking about the drivers, like why do you actually like do things in life, and like what actually drives to you to go to school and like do DJing and so on. If your intentions are within the worldly desires, the having more and preventing the loss of things, now that is not that nice to be around those kind of people, right? Because like when you're around those people, they're only like they maybe even want to have the friendship that you have with them just because they value the friendship, and like that's it. But they don't value you for being you. They cannot see you. They only see like the friendship and the things that they gain from that, like material gains and so on. So those people like have like the bad ego. It's like they have like this kind of like ego, what is not really nice to be around. But imagine if those people that you were around, they were more generous, they were more loving, more kind, more accepting, more in the present moment, and they wanted to share their happiness with you. Now those people are 10 out of 10s. You go to a DJ club with those people, and the DJ club is like that, then they're like making the DJ music, and they only want to do that because they want to share their own love for DJing with you, and like the music that they have, and that music sounds much more greater than the music that they are creating. If they're like just thinking about, oh, like I want to be the most famous person in this DJ club, and I want to have like going to places, and I want to make money with this too, right? But also that really brings me to Christianity too, because in the Gospel of Thomas, what is outside of the Bible, there I don't remember how it went, but the Gospel of Thomas is text of the different sayings that Christ used to have, but it is up to one person's own beliefs that if they actually are or not. But in one of the sayings that Christ had was that a person asked Christ that when will the heaven come? Like when will like the heaven of the heaven realms come to earth, and like when we will be one with the heaven. And the Christ, I don't remember what he exactly said, but he said something along these lines, that the heaven is already here. Like it's not in the future, it's not in the past, it's already here, it's in the present moment. It is within the trees, within the rivers, within the rocks, within the humans, within the hearts. It is within this present moment itself. And there doesn't need to be anything. And the holy person sees that, and they have achieved the holy kingdom and the kingdom of God when they can be within, see the holiness and the heaven amongst the earth itself and within the nature itself. And that's something that, of course, that goes against like the Christian teaching of like that there is like an actual heaven, like a physical heaven or something like that. But I like that teaching a lot, because it really says that like in the present moment you can only have the happiness itself. Now, yeah, go on.
Never mind.
Yeah. No worries. You're always free to ask questions and to raise your hand and so on. But just today is also like, you know, my first time when I'm actually like quite heavily talking about something quite heavy in general. So I don't know if you guys like that, like talking about the world desire itself, because it's kind of like one directional talk itself. But I guess that like
Creek.
Yeah, I miss Creek too. I miss Creek too. But if you guys want, we can have talks where that are really, a little bit more interactive. But if you guys like this, because I can go through all the different hindrances, but if you guys want, it can be more like interactive from your point of view. Because I feel like compared to other talks that I have had, this hasn't been that much fun. But I'm happy if people have found something from this talk itself that had made them learn something completely new. So for people who have been here on my talks previously, you can have votes. You can do a thumbs up or thumbs down for saying that was this good, or would you guys want to have more about where I ask a question from the audience and then I answer that on the next talk? Because I have been doing that. So what I've been trying to do is that like having a question from the audience, and then like for example, like we were answering the question of how does one find worth within oneself, and then answering that on the next week talk. But did you like more of this, like talking more about the deeper side, the philosophical side, or would you guys more want to have it more on the fact of like more about you guys? Because this can be always changed.
I kind of agree because like but then again, people have their different perspective, but I like to hear like other people's perspective because it's very nice, because then it makes it more interesting, because like to like understand where people come from and stuff, because then you can like kind of like learn something from them and they can learn something from you, because everyone's their own teacher at their own ways, kind of depending on how you see it as. So I might be thinking that way, but I might be, if that's correct or true.
Yeah. Just trying to find a good mix of both. For sure. Because usually when we had other teachers over here, Creek and Zenke, we used to have like really interactive talks. But I myself, I like more about like the philosophical side of it and like teaching that to other people. But it can come across like more like just me preaching and nothing else really. But I think with that we are a little bit over time, because I was saying that like this might go a little bit over time. So starting with the guided meditation, we could start doing that.